Much unhappiness has come into the world because of bewilderment and things left unsaid. Fyodor Dostoevsky. This is what Dostoevsky said about awareness and the silent torment it brings. He understood something most people spend their whole lives trying to avoid. The deeper you think, the lonelier you become. Because once you start seeing the layers beneath human behavior, the illusions that hold society together, and the hidden motives even within yourself, everything changes. The world no longer feels familiar. The faces around you seem distant, their conversations shallow, their ambitions hollow. And suddenly, you find yourself standing alone, not because you chose isolation, but because truth has a price, and that price is often solitude. Dostoevsky knew this deeply. His life, his writings, and his mind were all shaped by a relentless search for meaning, a search that led him into the darkest corners of the human psyche. And in those depths, he found both brilliance and despair. He discovered that those who truly think, who genuinely see, often carry a weight that others cannot comprehend, a silent burden, an invisible exile. In this video, we journey through that inner maze, the one Dostoevsky walked with trembling steps and unflinching honesty. We'll explore why profound awareness can alienate you from the world, why intellectual and emotional depth often come hand in hand with solitude, and why, for some, loneliness is not a condition to be fixed, but a consequence of clarity. This is not just a look at Dostoevsky's thoughts, it's a reflection on our own inner lives, on what it means to truly feel, think, and perceive in a world that often demands simplicity and distraction. So, take a breath, and prepare to walk through the quiet corridors of the mind, where truth whispers, and where few dare to go. To think too much is a disease. Notes from Underground, Fyodor Dostoevsky. Dostoevsky was not condemning thought itself. He was revealing the hidden cost of going too far into its depths. Deep thinking is not just a mental activity. It becomes a way of existing, of seeing the world through a lens that strips away the comfort of illusion. When you begin to truly think, not just to analyze facts or solve problems, but to question existence itself, you inevitably start to feel alone. Why? Because most of the world is not built on truth, but on shared beliefs, habits, and narratives designed to make life bearable. Surface-level thought allows people to belong, to play their role in society, to connect easily, to live without the burden of seeing too much. But deep thought disrupts this. It reveals contradictions in what people value, exposes the emptiness behind social rituals, and raises questions that most are unwilling to face. The thinker starts to notice how much of life is performance, how people say things they don't mean, chase goals they don't understand, and avoid silence because silence is where truth waits. And so, a quiet distance begins to grow. Imagine someone in a room full of people discussing money, status, and image. If that person brings up mortality, the absurdity of chasing endless ambition, or the fragility of human connection, he becomes the strange one. He is seen as intense, too serious, or simply difficult to be around. Not because he is wrong, but because he has broken the unspoken rule: don't think too deeply, or at least, don't talk about it. This is the beginning of philosophical loneliness, a state where your inner world becomes so rich, so filled with questions and awareness, that the external world begins to feel foreign, even hollow. Dostoevsky lived this dissonance. He saw that the more a person becomes aware, the more they reflect on suffering, meaning, freedom, and morality, the more they feel cut off from the noise of daily life. It's not arrogance, and it's not misanthropy. It's the natural result of seeing behind the curtain. What once seemed meaningful becomes trivial. Conversations feel shallow. Goals seem arbitrary. And slowly, the thinker drifts, not because he wants to, but because he no longer knows how to stay. He listens, but his mind is elsewhere. He engages, but it feels forced. And at night, when the world quiets down, he sits alone with his thoughts, both comforted and burdened by them. This is the paradox of awareness. It brings insight, but also alienation. It grants clarity, but takes away ease. The world no longer offers simple pleasures. It demands reflection. And in that reflection, the thinker often finds solitude, not as a choice, but as a consequence of perceiving too much. Most people are not ready to confront the rawness of life, the uncertainty, the suffering, the fleeting nature of time. But the deep thinker lives with these truths every day, and so he walks through life slightly apart, not above, not below, just apart. Dostoevsky wrote from that place where thought and emotion collide, where clarity is both gift and curse. And in doing so, he revealed a truth many feel but cannot express. The deeper you think, the lonelier you become, not because the world rejects you, but because you no longer belong to it in the same way. You see through the surface, and once you do, you cannot unsee it. Dostoevsky did not simply write about isolation. He lived it, felt it, and was forever shaped by it. His life was marked by moments of extreme rupture, the kind that fracture a man's soul and leave behind not wounds, but permanent scars. Arrested for his involvement in intellectual circles that dared to question authority, he stood one morning before a firing squad, blindfolded, waiting for death. In those final seconds before the rifles fired, he tasted the edge of existence, only to be spared at the last moment by a staged pardon. That moment, a cruel brush with annihilation, altered him forever. Death had looked him in the eyes and stepped back. What remains after such an experience is not fear, but a haunting awareness of life's fragility and the inescapable loneliness that comes from knowing how little separates us from oblivion. This was only the beginning. Years of hard labor in Siberia followed, where cold, hunger, and silence became daily companions. There, he witnessed the darkest corners of human suffering, and yet also glimpsed strange moments of grace amid despair. And then there was the epilepsy, a violent, unpredictable force that shattered his sense of control. Each seizure was a descent into chaos, followed by recovery not just of body but of self. These trials, prison, near death, illness, addiction, did not break him. They transformed him. But transformation comes at a cost. The Dostoevsky who emerged from these experiences was not a man at ease in the world. He had seen too much, felt too deeply, and so his life became a delicate negotiation between engaging with others and retreating into solitude, not out of choice, but necessity. His characters reflect this tension. Raskolnikov, tormented by guilt and reason, isolates himself not just from society, but from his own conscience. The world becomes a blur, his thoughts a prison. Then there's Prince Myshkin, pure, sensitive, almost angelic, whose honesty and emotional depth render him alien in a corrupt society. He is loved, but not understood, welcomed, but never truly embraced. These figures are not simply alone. They are internally divided, torn between the desire to connect and the impossibility of truly doing so in a world that fears depth and truth. For Dostoevsky, isolation was not merely being without others. It was the gnawing tension within oneself, the inability to escape one's own mind. His characters walk through life with the weight of consciousness pressing on their shoulders, and that weight often drives them inward, into reflection, into madness, into silence. Yet, and this is crucial, Dostoevsky never portrayed isolation as pure weakness. It was suffering, yes, but also a crucible for insight. In Solitude, his characters confront themselves, their darkness, their contradictions, and through that confrontation, growth becomes possible. Not easy, not guaranteed, but possible. For him, isolation was a space where the soul could be stripped of illusion and face truth in its rawest form. That truth may hurt, but it clarifies. In a world that prizes constant connection, constant noise, we often forget that solitude can be sacred. Not all isolation is exile. Sometimes it is retreat, reflection, and rebirth. Dostoevsky teaches us that while loneliness can feel like a curse, it can also be a mirror, showing us who we are beneath the roles we play. His life and work remind us, isolation is not the absence of connection, but a journey towards something deeper, a reckoning with the self, and perhaps a step closer to understanding others not through words, but through shared vulnerability. Thus, for those who feel alone in their thoughts, lost in their reflections, know this: you walk a path many have walked before. And like Dostoevsky, you may find that within the silence of isolation lies the seed of profound transformation. But how do we live with awareness without being crushed by it? How do we carry the weight of deep thought without letting it fracture us from within? This is the quiet struggle of every thinking soul. The tension between understanding and endurance, between clarity and the simple need to keep going. Because awareness, though powerful, is not always kind. It reveals everything, the beauty and the pain, the meaning and the emptiness, the fleeting nature of time and the illusions we cling to. And once you see these things, you cannot unsee them. But you can learn to live with them. The key is not to escape awareness, nor to drown in it, but to hold it gently, to find a rhythm where thought and life coexist, where reflection does not replace experience, but enhances it. Too often, those who think deeply retreat entirely into their minds, living in abstractions, analyzing every gesture, every word, every moment, until the world feels distant and unreal. But life is not meant to be dissected endlessly. It is meant to be lived. Thinking is a tool, not a prison. And so, we must learn to step back from the edge of thought, to let go when the mind becomes too heavy, to trust in the present moment, even when it cannot be fully explained. One way to do this is to nurture depth, not just in thought, but in connection. Seek not many acquaintances, but a few real companions, those with whom silence is not awkward, and with whom thought can flow freely without fear. In a world obsessed with more friends, more followers, more distractions, the thinking soul finds peace in less, but deeper. A single honest conversation, a shared moment of vulnerability, a glance that says, "I see you." These are the ties that anchor us, that remind us we are not alone in our awareness. And while connection grounds us, the mind still needs care. It needs discipline. Left unchecked, thought can spiral, overwhelm, even destroy. This is why learning to guide your thoughts is not a luxury. It is survival. Through practices like meditation, stillness, even moments of quiet contemplation, we create space between ourselves and our thoughts. We learn to observe without being consumed, to think without being trapped. Not every idea deserves our full attention. Not every fear needs to be chased. Awareness is a flame, bright, but dangerous if left untended. But with care, it can illuminate rather than burn. And in this balance, we must also make room for simplicity, for art, for nature, for the gentle rhythm of ordinary life. Not everything has to be profound. Sometimes, drinking tea, watching the sky change color, or hearing a familiar song is enough. These moments ground us. They remind us that we are more than our thoughts, that we are bodies, senses, hearts, not just minds spinning in endless loops. Dostoevsky himself, despite the storm of his thoughts, found solace in creation, in faith, in the tender moments between pain. He teaches us that life is not one-dimensional. It is contrast, light and shadow, thought and silence, solitude, and touch. To live with awareness, then, is not to carry the full weight of existence every moment, but to know when to think and when to feel, when to retreat and when to reach out. It is a dance, not a burden, a flow, not a fight. So take time to reflect, but also to live, to move, to laugh, to rest. Let awareness deepen your experience, not replace it. Let your mind be a companion, not a tyrant. And when the weight of thought feels too much, remember, you can set it down. You can return to the breath, to the moment, to the simple joy of being. That is not weakness. It is wisdom. It is strength. And it is the way forward. Dostoevsky was not a prophet of despair. He was a seeker of truth. And that truth, however dark, always pointed toward understanding, compassion, and redemption. Though his works often carry a somber tone, filled with suffering, isolation, and the inner turmoil of consciousness, at their core lies a quiet plea, not for withdrawal from the world, but for seeing it more clearly and loving it more honestly. His characters are not simply broken, they are human, deeply flawed, yet still yearning for connection, for forgiveness, for something pure amidst the chaos. Take Prince Myshkin from The Idiot, for example, a man whose innocence, kindness, and unwavering empathy set him apart in a corrupt and cynical society. Myshkin's isolation is not chosen, nor is it celebrated. It is the consequence of a world that does not know what to do with someone who loves without judgment and sees with unclouded eyes. Yet despite being misunderstood, ridiculed, and even pitied, Myshkin never stops believing in the possibility of goodness. He holds on to love, not a romantic ideal, but a compassionate gaze that sees the pain in others and refuses to turn away. This is the essence of Dostoevsky's message. True awareness does not lead to bitterness, but to a deeper capacity for empathy. It is easy to retreat into isolation when you see the world's hypocrisy, its contradictions and cruelty. But Dostoevsky's characters teach us that real strength lies in staying open, in choosing to understand rather than to judge, to forgive rather than to condemn. He shows us that those who see the most are not doomed to despair. They are called to respond differently. The weight of awareness can crush us, yes, but it can also awaken us to the shared vulnerability of all human beings. Dostoevsky believed that through suffering, we become capable of compassion, not as weakness, but as the highest form of wisdom. His vision was not one of escape, but of engagement, a call to enter the world with eyes open and heart softened. The path of the thinker, then, is not to abandon life, but to live it fully, with humility, with grace, and with a willingness to embrace both its darkness and its light. Awareness is not an end, it is a beginning, a doorway to deeper connection, to love that is rooted not in illusion, but in truth. And that, perhaps, is Dostoevsky's most profound gift, the reminder that even in our solitude, even in the depths of thought, we are never truly alone. We are bound to one another by the quiet thread of understanding, and through that thread, there is always a way back, not to the noise of the world, but to its heart. And now we've reached the end of this video, and perhaps the beginning of a new reflection. In a world that rarely pauses, where the loudest voices often drown out the quiet ones, deep thinking can feel like a burden, something that sets you apart, makes you question everything, and at times makes you feel alone. But it's important to remember that this kind of awareness, while heavy, is also a gift. It allows you to see what others overlook, to feel life with greater intensity, to notice the subtle beauty and the hidden meaning in ordinary things. And if ever you feel the weight of your thoughts pressing down, know that you are not broken. You are simply awake. Dostoevsky, through all his darkness, showed us that from pain can come insight, and from solitude can come light. He turned his own inner chaos into words that have guided generations. Like him, you too can transform your solitude, not into isolation, but into understanding. The path inward may be difficult, but it is not empty. Within that silence, you can find clarity, strength, and even peace. So do not fear your depth. Do not run from your mind. Explore it, but also remember to return. Return to the world with gentleness, to the people you care about, to the small moments that make life whole. Awareness is not meant to crush you. It is meant to shape you, to open your heart, and to help you live more truthfully. And in that, there is hope.